Okay, let's pick back up, do some viewer game analysis. And in this game, we have a blitz 3-minute game between a 2200 with white and a 2300 with black from leechess.org. So without further ado, let's jump in, and we get ourselves a modern Phillidor. And there's a number of different ways to play. I've never been a big fan of the d takes e5 lines. I feel like black is just fine. And on the Palm Beach Chess Patreon and on the Palm Beach Chess site, we have our resident grandmaster has done a series on the Phillidor and covers it in full detail, showing that black is fine with these d takes e lines. So I feel like white played the best move with knight f3, and after knight bd7, bishop c4 is the classical approach and easily the most popular. But from my experience, Phillidor players just want the solid game that you're going to get with 5 bishop c4. So one of the recommendations I make to my students here is to play the Shirov gambit with g4. And if black really doesn't know what he's doing here, he can get hammered out of the opening. So going a few moves to give an idea or two. Knight takes, rook g1. Then we put the bishop on c4, eyeing f7 for potential big threats. So h6 makes a lot of sense. And capture in the center. And we get a long castling situation. And for the price of a pawn, notice the amount of extra development we've gotten with white. I feel like white has excellent compensation for the pawn, and it would be my preference to play this type of position all day long. So, little sideline, if you have interest. Bishop c4, of course, absolutely nothing wrong with it. Bishop e7, and the first point here is I wanted to go over a few of these sidelines because the Phillidor has a reputation to be quite solid, but you need to know how to play these different imbalanced positions from this point. So d takes e5, d takes e5, and there's 2 tactical branches here that a Phillidor player must know. The first is bishop takes f7, and we get this situation where the queen comes out to g6, and we have this long variation where most of the games are drawn in the database from this position. The other variation here is knight g5, which if I had to choose between the two, this would be my preference, where the queen is not going to be able to come out to g6 in this line. And knight takes a8. Of course, you could just grab it. And we get this type of position, which the engine deems roughly equal, but black does pretty well in practice. So the Phillidor, even though it is a solid option, it's not just something that you can sit down and play because of these nasty tactical / theoretical lines. And then you have to be aware and have the technique to hold these wickedly imbalanced positions. So keep that in mind if you're interested in the Phillidor. Castles. And a4 is completely fine. Typically, you're going to see a4 after black has played c6 or a6. So rook e1 is one of those moves that we see all throughout these lines. And whether it be c6 or a6, the plan is expansion with b5. And that's when we play a4. I mean, it doesn't affect much and it'll transpose, but minor technique. If he doesn't ever play c6 or a6, a4 could be hard to justify, we'll say. I mean, more than likely it's going to happen as we see transposition. A5, I like it. It gets space and it directly plays against the idea of B5. Can't take back with a pawn, and this is an inferior structure for black. H6 was played, natural enough. And this was one of the only times in the game that I felt white could have improved on his play. Because white's position is golden right here. You've got a little bit of an edge. You're nursing it. You got your first move edge. I like the A5 move. But then this next move, B3, it may be a theoretical move. Being I'm not an E4 player, I'm not aware. But I much prefer staying with standard development. Because B3 says that I'm going to be developing my dark squared bishop to B2, and I just don't feel that he's going to be well placed on that square. So I prefer H3, and a key move just to wait around and nurse my edge, because black is not exactly fruitful with ideas. So after rook e8, natural, rook e1, I'm just going to get my pieces out of the way, and I'm waiting on black here. Bishop e3, and if black doesn't liquidate in the center, I have trouble seeing what he's going to do. And we're actually following a game by Ivanchuk. G3, bishop g2, overprotecting the pawn. And after f4, white already had a substantial advantage in a game from 93. And it ended up being drawn, but like when looking at it, like white's already a little bit over +2 here. So this would be my type of preference. Like when you're playing the Phillidor, you'll see h3 and rook e1. I like this a4, a5 idea. Like black should definitely play a5 himself to stop this. But this was the key moment that you're really putting the positional squeeze. So patience. You've got the extra space. Black is the one who has got to prove something here and will do something drastic at a certain point, as we saw in the example game with e takes d4. So coming back to the main game with b3, this is the type of minor inaccuracy where a little bit of that first move edge slips. We're not down material, we haven't blundered, anything like that. It's just not optimal, we'll say. So d takes e5 was played in the game. And now knight h4. And this went from white had the edge to this is already worse. And it's interesting the computer's line because it wants to fix all the pieces here. And this stems from the b3 move. It wants to play knight b1. It wants to play bishop f1. And then if I can trade off my bishop, great, because it wasn't great on b2. And there was a lot of undevelopment in order to try to just uncoil, which I find very interesting. Knight h4, on the other hand, has the issue of bishop b4, where you can't hold everything together, and black already has a big edge. But black missed it in the game and played b5. Now, ping pong evaluation there. White was good, had some edge. Black missed bishop b4, which would have given him at least a pawn in the green edge. But now b5 hands it right back. White's got his first move edge again. A takes b6 is the snaggletooth pawn structure with the a7 and c6 pawns. It's definitely not pleasing to the eye. We don't want to lose the bishop pair, but happy to play bishop a6. We would love for black to take, and we can very easily look at doing some pile-up type maneuvers with queen a1, eyeing the a7 pawn, and also doing an x-ray with the bishop, which could very well justify the bishop's placement on b2 at that point. So black wisely goes bishop e6. And I like white's plan here. Queen f3, justifying this knight on h4, looking for some potential attack. Again, if the bishop was on long diagonal, it could definitely coordinate better with the queen and knight for an attack. So knight bd7, knight f5. Bishop pairs in our hands now with a better pawn structure. White's definitely well in the driver's seat. You can't have RB. Knight e2. Definitely want to make sure to limit the abilities of this knight to hop in. Really like the move knight e2. And here the engine didn't like the natural rook a d1. Bigger fan of knight c1. And we do this take just in order to optimize all the pieces against the e-pawn. I don't know how I feel about giving up the bishop pair, but it does make sense. And you do have type of plan where you could play rook a6, double up, and continue to pressure in multiple places. So I guess positionally this is a good way to play. Rook a d1 was played, and I think the engine doesn't like this. It cuts white's edge from a pawn and a quarter down to about 6/10 of a pawn because of what we just saw, where white can coordinate the pieces and kind of poke on that weak a7 pawn. So rook a d8, knight g3, keeping pieces out of there. And here it's natural to eye that weak h pawn, as was played in the game, but it makes white's pieces a bit awkward. I much would have rather have seen queen g4 for flexibilities, just purposes, and after knight f6, queen f3 compared to queen h3. A lot more flexibility, and quality pieces are what we're looking for, and we have better options. And I feel that we get a position without risk that we can play forever here. So coming back, queen h3, knight b6, and a bit of maneuvering. Going for the gusto over here. And this was a key moment because it's very easy to make the attempt to justify play with queen h3 by following up with knight takes h6, which happened in the game. And the engine's going blunder, blunder. Queen f3 was best, because ideally we would love to play knight f6. See, I'll give a null move, for instance. And the e-pawn's going to be difficult to hold, especially here, rook takes d8, followed by captures, where the weak squares around the black king is going to lead to his death. So, queen f3 followed by the attempt for knight f6, I feel like is best play. But after knight takes h6, bishop c1, this is a good pause your video moment. What is best defense for black? Because we already know that knight takes h6 was a blunder, according to the engine. It's only a blunder if your opponent can prove it, though. So, can you prove it? Pause your video and figure out how black is better. Okay, so right here we have blunders in hand, because black actually plays rook takes d1, which is a blunder, and white should follow up with the Zwischenzug, takes with check, followed by captures. Blunders on both sides here, potential time trouble. I mean, it was a 3-minute game. But after bishop c1, the best move is g5. And the idea was that the g-pawn was in the way. It looks like we're just giving it away for free because you needed the rook to be able to laterally defend. And now black has a piece for 2 pawns. So in the driver's seat, should be a technical win in the long term. But rook takes d1. The in-between move was missed by both players, probably a pre-move capture. Rook takes d1 was played, and we're back to that idea again. g5 needs to be played for the rook lift, but rook d8 was played in the game, and you give him the opportunity. He may miss it the first time, but he's definitely not missing it the second time. And with the weak squares around the king, this is definitely not going to end well for black. Rook e1, I love it. Keep tension. Knight d7, trying to control some key squares, but bishop's coming in just the same. h4, love it. Cracking open the king side. h5's coming. Rook e6 is a decent attempt, but after rook e3, we're swinging over and going to be finishing things off nicely. Knight f8 was played in the game. Now, what would you do here with white? Hopefully, you were seeing the themes earlier when I showed the queen f3, knight f6 check plan in a side variation. So, best here is bishop f6. No matter what black does, it ends in mate. But of course, just like in my games, I miss the tactics when I'm in time trouble, or just in general. h5 was played, and you give him the opportunity twice. He isn't going to miss, and he gets the mate. So, another viewer game analysis. Hopefully you enjoyed it. A little bit of Phillidor action for the day. I don't play the Phillidor too much. I'm typically going to be a check system type of guy. So this definitely adds to it, and being I'm not an e4 player. Thank you for your contribution.